Hi everyone. This lecture is intended to provide a preview of what you're going to see in Chapter 2 of the textbook that we are reading this semester, Jill Lepore's These Truths. As I mentioned in the syllabus lecture, these chapter preview lectures are definitely not going to take the place of actually reading the chapters in the textbook. They provide just a really brief overview of what you're going to be seeing, and they're meant to give you a preview of some of the major topics and sections of material that you're going to be seeing. So hopefully they'll give you a way of thinking about and organizing the content that you're going to be reading in this textbook. And it would really encourage you not to be intimidated by this textbook. It's a different format than you might see in some other college courses. It doesn't have a lot of the color diagrams and images and headers and organizing graphics on the side. And for that reason, it might look like a lot of text on the page that might be somewhat intimidating. But the writing, if you really do sit down and work on it, can be pretty straightforward and manageable. So we're going to be talking about and thinking about this semester how to best approach this material, to not be intimidated by what we're going to be reading in this textbook, and to try to make the best sense we can of this material, because in an online course like this course, the textbook is really going to be the primary source that you're going to be getting a lot of the information from. That's going to be important for the quizzes, the reading responses, the exams, and also the essays that you're going to be writing over the course of this semester. So in this lecture, we're going to talk about Chapter 2. For the first week, we read Chapter 1. If you haven't read Chapter 1 yet, you'll want to make sure that you do that before we have the first exam. Chapter 1 primarily looked at why and how Europeans began to explore and colonize what they called the New World. Chapter 2 primarily deals with England's colonies in the New World, these English colonies that ultimately are going to become the United States. But it's important to keep in mind that England was really late to this game of European colonization of the New World. They had a lot of catching up to do compared to the Spanish, the Portuguese, the French, and the Dutch. And the first section of this chapter deals primarily with England's first permanent colony in the Americas. This was Jamestown in Virginia. The second section of this chapter examines a somewhat later English colony in North America, and that's the Plymouth colony in Massachusetts. This section and this chapter as a whole spend a fair amount of time comparing and contrasting the different motivations and bases for these two colonies, Jamestown and Plymouth. So you'll want to think about how these colonies are similar and also how these colonies are quite different from each other. Sections 3 and 4 might seem like they veer off topic. They spend quite a lot of time looking at political and social developments in England itself, and you might wonder why we need to go so deeply into English history in a course on US history. But the basic reason for this is that it's really important to understand what's going on in England itself in order to understand what's going on in England's colonies during this period. So it's important to understand how the English Civil War and the later restoration of the English monarchy impacted England and also had a really big impact on its colonies in North America. The chapter is lastly going to look at some of the significant upheavals that we see in England's North American colonies as they develop. And these upheavals take quite a lot of different forms, violent uprisings, political upheavals. There are religious upheavals in the form of the Great Awakening that sweeps through the colonies in the early 18th century that you're going to be reading about. So you are, above all, going to be reading about a lot of change, both in England itself and also in England's colonies in North America. In the meantime, good luck reading this second chapter from Jill Lepore's These Truths, and let me know if you have any questions about what you are reading.